Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Dragon Prince video. This is going to be my review for the new Dragon Prince graphic novel, Bloodmoon Huntress. Managed to get this book early, my order just shipped early, it arrived, so that's why I have it quite a bit before release. Official release date for this book is July 19th as far as I'm aware. So I will be splitting this review up into a non-spoiler section, which will be the first bit, and then it will be clearly marked when it goes into spoilers. I will say though, in comparison to the first graphic novel, I don't think there's as many spoilers for this one, because the focus of this, at least to me, the highlight of it was more just the character dynamics. So spoiling that is literally just sort of reading out the dialogue on almost nearly every page. The spoilery more section of it is the stuff that relates to the Bloodmoon Huntress herself, but surprisingly, that's probably for me the least kind of interesting section of the book. That's maybe the section where there's maybe a little bit more flaws, whereas the character writing is really good throughout. So yeah, an interesting time for the book to release. Of course, we're coming up to San Diego Comic-Con, where we know we are going to be getting more information about Season 4. The panel, I believe, is going to be on Thursday, July 21st. And I think they have confirmed we will get more Season 4 news. So we know Season 4 is coming out this year. We have no release date. So we're expecting a release date, probably a full trailer at Comic-Con this time out. Which makes it kind of interesting that this is the new book, whereas the book that actually tells us pretty much everything we know of what to expect maybe for Season 4 is the book that came out 2 years ago. So I almost feel in reflection, these should have been swapped basically, and this should have been the book just coming out as a prequel to the new season, but it ends up being this one. It's a weird one where right now when we're so focused on Season 4, this is the book that feels more important. But I think as we go through the seasons and look at this maybe retroactively, I think this will be the book that's maybe just more remembered, because this is more of a setup to one of the middle seasons of the overall series, whereas this just is the place that has this backstory section with Rayla, Athari, and Runan. So that's kind of an interesting kind of perspective to have on it. I'll read out the back of the book here, just to give you a general broad sense about what the setup for the story is. So, every Moonshadow elf knows the scary stories of the Bloodmoon Huntress, the evil sorceress who steals your blood on the night of the harvest moon. Everyone also knows those legends aren't true. But for young Rayla, whose parents recently left her behind to fulfill their duty as members of the elite Dragon Guard, this autumn is scarier than most. Her guardians, Runan and Athari, are still getting the hang of the whole parenting thing, and no one will tell Rayla what Runan does for a living. She spends most of her time exploring the forest outside the Silver Grove, when Rayla discovers a young Skywing elf in danger just hours before the harvest moon will rise. The scary stories become real. Can she stop the Huntress before the moon reaches its zenith? And that effectively is the core beats of the entire first half of the book. So 50 plus pages of comic. That's more or less what happens. But obviously the highlight is the page to page dialogue of those scenes of, at the very start of the book, Rayla's parents kind of saying goodbye to her, trying to get across the idea that this is our duty, this is very important, we have to protect, the Dragon Prince until the egg hatches. It's an important duty. You'll understand in time. She's upset and feels like her parents are sort of abandoning her to a certain degree, and so she's left in a pretty upset kind of situation, and she's kind of frustrated about her parents about this, and that's what the book kind of goes into, kind of highlighting this idea that you can in a way treat other people as family as well, and so coming to actually see Runan and Athari as extra parents is just as good, and also in a way through them understand the kind of duty that people have based on what their kind of roles are. And that's where they sort of interlink the idea of her understanding what Runan's job is and why he has that duty, helps her to sort of understand what her parents are doing, all that more. So it is really good, that character stuff that they do, and I'll get into that in a little bit more. As far as the other side of the book goes, the whole Bloodmoon Huntress kind of aspect. This is where obviously the more kind of actiony side of things come out. This is the conflict in a way and how it happens. It definitely feels like more of a thing where like they have to have this here to have a conflict in the book. Otherwise, the strength is definitely the character stuff and this parent, found parent kind of child dynamic. That's the strength. The Bloodmoon Huntress is interesting from sort of a kind of lore perspective to a degree, but they don't focus on it sort of enough to where I feel like it's executed like super, super well, as I'll get into when I more kind of talk about it in full details. But it just ends up feeling like, okay, that's nice, that's solid. It could have been, I think, something a little bit more impactful, and maybe we'll see more of this get referenced as we go forward. But it just made for, I felt like, a solid enough way to sort of bring Rayla into action alongside her new parents, and create more of the dynamic that we probably know of as what her dynamic is like with Renan and also Ithari. So it was needed, but I felt like they probably could have given a little bit more detail on some of the stuff with the Bloodmoon Huntress. But the highlights, like I was saying, I think it is a lot of the stuff around her trying to figure out what Runan's job is. Because the dynamic we get early on is that Ithari is the one who kind of like more talks to her and sort of like parents her on a more day-to-day basis. Whereas Renan just sort of like leaves, because obviously he does stuff at night time, so he kind of has to reverse schedule in a way to everyone. So she just constantly comments about like, oh hey, you're off doing this thing, eh? The kind of rumors in a way about like what he's up to, and he's just like, yeah, sure. But then one day she actually follows him. But before that, you really see the dynamic with Ithari is quite good, where she just badgers him constantly about, tell me about this, tell me about this, tell me about Renan, please. Like, it's the only thing I really want to know. And she kind of really forces his hand, that he eventually just sort of relents and just becomes a little bit more open with her about these things, especially as she discovers stuff on her own. So she does follow Renan out to one of his meetings, and of course we all know Renan is an assassin, Moonshadow Elf assassin. So this is her, I suppose, finding out about the group she eventually goes to join in the future. And this is a big thing, because the first one is like she's kind of caught and has to like be kind of escorted home and just be like, okay, here's the situation. And of course she's a kid, she's kind of like, whoa, you're trying to teach me all this good stuff, but you're an assassin? How does this work? And they kind of have to go into explaining the idea of, that this is a duty that is ultimately needed in the world, that we all respect life. It's an important aspect of being a Moonshadow Elf. But to an assassin especially, it is extremely important to understand and respect life. So you know the significance of taking one, and the importance of that. With regards to like the idea of, if you take this one life, you will protect so many more going forward, and that there's a certain level of respect there with the idea that none of them relish taking lives. That's something they all agree on, but understand that ultimately it is important. Not everything can be talked through exactly, and that is part of Runan's duty. It's why it's so, tough, that job, that duty, is that to choose to do that, to kind of kill for a living. And in a way, through understanding this, obviously it helps her to understand the duty of her parents, needing to, separate themselves from their child to protect, the dragons, like an important aspect of Zadia, of course. And that dynamic works really well, because you get one scene where, like, after this, Runan actually brings her to one of these meetings of the assassins, because Ithari just gets frustrated that Rayla just keeps asking him all these questions. And here, she obviously overhears some of the stuff that they talk about. The whole Moonshadow form gets explained, and she overhears that. She actually has a pretty nice conversation with Andromeda, one of the younger female assassins, which again gets across the idea of it's not just Runan who really respects life, they all are like that in this group. So if you wanted more on that dynamic from the very, very start of the series, and the whole idea of like Rayla being an assassin, and that whole idea of like, well, she doesn't want to take a life, and how does this even happen in the first place, you sort of see that here in a way, that she accepts this, you know, she comes to see Ithari and Runan as actual parents, and she kind of wants the training in a way he can offer, but she's still not fully sold on the idea of killing. So it's just that sense of like, okay, she wants to better understand the kind of duty in a way of all of this. So that's, in my mind, like really, really well done. She meets this Skywing elf. Let me get his name here in the middle of the book. Suro, Suroh. Like I said, you could see him here. And we just quickly established that like he managed to escape. He and his parents were caught by the Bloodmoon Huntress. He managed to escape, and that's the dynamic here. She feels the importance because she trusts this boy straight away, whereas everyone else just thinks it's a legend, but they have direct proof that it's actually correct. And it's Rayla kind of showing her bravery, putting herself on the line to kind of try and solve this herself, which brings other people into play. It's relatively nicely done. I feel like I can't say much more about the Bloodmoon Huntress stuff without just jumping into spoilers, but like I said, it makes for, I think, a nice conflict, given that the people fighting are mainly going to be Runan, so it has to be someone that is like a challenge to him. So there's that dynamic as well of, them rushing in, to save Rayla and showing that they care, which is kind of nice. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the spoiler section here. Like I said, there's not too much like major reveals throughout this book. The main thing you get is obviously that the Bloodmoon Huntress, like, what's the deal here? She's a legend, almost like an ancient legend. So immediately the idea is she is super surprisingly like long-lived. And you get the idea that, okay, the harvest moon is also known as the blood moon, and it's this important time when, in a way, like, life and death are close. We sort of know these dynamics that have been presented about the moon-based powers. And so the idea is that she seems to have this blood-based ability where she sort of sacrifices people and takes their blood. And the book never fully pieces it all together for you, but the idea seems to be that she kills these people, drains their blood, and this blood keeps her alive, and that she's effectively stealing their life force in their blood, and this is what keeps her alive all this time, to the point where she's gone and become a legend. And she kind of even taunts Runan when they fight about the whole idea of, I will completely outlive you, to the point where, like, I'll be always remembered in history, whereas you'll just be like a footnote or something like that. Like I said, they never fully piece the whole thing together. You're sort of left to just be like, okay, something about, she does this like ritual where she kills them with a special dagger, and then there's vials of blood, and she drinks the blood. Like, you can piece it together, but they never fully explain it properly. Runan actually like knows what her like actual name is, which is kind of interesting. Let me just kind of find that little section here. Yeah, he comes in and says, from the histories I've heard, Kimdale, Kimdael, I expected more. Now, I do think that like the character design for her is actually really interesting. Like, here's probably the best like full page spread for her that you can sort of just about see there. Really interesting like design, given that like she is a moon shadow elf based on what they say in this book, but obviously like sort of a fallen moon shadow elf who is more focused on this kind of blood based magic. The problem is just that like her characterization is, it's not even leaning too much into the whole idea of like, oh, I want to live forever. It is very much just that she has become this monster, and more using the direct comparison of the whole idea of like the assassins, their job is to kill people, but they respect life, versus this villain who kills people at will, doesn't care who she kills, just to, in a way, keep her life going. And there's a massive contrast between those two things. That's the main dynamic. Otherwise, she just is sort of a, monstery like villain here, kind of showing how far I suppose someone can fall. I think this book would have been like absolutely incredible if they had done some sort of a backstory to show the fall of this character, in a way like why someone from this culture became this way, or something like that. It's just, I think, missing something in that it just feels like a kind of enemy for the book, rather than something of significance, because they don't actually like give you more context for who this character is. There's a fight that happens. It's pretty nice. Like, Ithari is there as well, and the idea is that throughout the whole thing he's preparing these sort of magical arrows that will sort of like counter her abilities to a certain degree. Renan uses his moon shadow form for a little bit. He takes a wound to the side, but with some teamwork between Ithari and Renan, they manage to defeat her. It's this kind of cool thing where like Ithari fires his bow and she dodges it, because she can do this thing where she sort of like poofs into mist and then like appears somewhere else. So she dodges his shot, but Renan catches the arrow and immediately loads it up in his bow and fires it, knowing that she's obviously going to try and attack Ithari. And so even before like she's fully like reappeared, the shot's already gone, and so he gets her like right in the shoulder. And after this, we just basically get that she retreats. She's kind of like, okay, you got me this time, but like you can't ever fully kill me type thing. And they just note that, okay, we've stopped her supply for a while, so she's going to be weakened for a bit, but that she will return. So it ends on a bit of a weird note where like they don't fully like kill this character or anything like that. This character is still out there, and I don't think the Bloodmoon Huntress has been referenced in like any other Dragon Prince material, at least as far as I'm aware. I haven't read the new RPG book and what lore is in there, so I don't know if there's any other reference to it. But like, if there's any maybe setup for something going forward, perhaps from this book it's just that we might see the Bloodmoon Huntress again in some way or another, but I don't really know. It doesn't feel like it's, that much of a focus. So there's that. The other main points here are just like that right towards the end, she does refer to Runan and Ithari as her parents to the Skywing Elf, which is nice. Well, it's not quite parents. They say, no, they're my family. So it's not quite her saying they're her parents, but no, they are family. So I do really like that. That gets across quite well. And then right at the end of the book, she does ask Runan to train her. So that is very, very interesting. Just kind of highlighting that she knows that she understands why he does what he does, and she kind of wants to learn that a little bit better. Especially because she ends up in this situation not being able to like be particularly useful, I suppose, in the final battle, outside of her alerting everyone to the fact that this was going on. She wants to be able to sort of fight herself and actually do something. So there is something very, very interesting. And I like this final moment of Runan does say, are you sure this is what you want? You know what my path is. Perhaps you'd rather train as your parents. As in, I think he's trying to say like, do you not want to do the kind of Dragon Guard training like your parents? But she's like, no. Besides, they're not here to train me. You are. And I kind of like that as just this moment of like, there's still a sense of like she's upset at her parents for leaving, even though she maybe understands that a bit more now. But these are the people here for her, and these are the people she now understands. She wants his training. But obviously, like, we know it's maybe not like her ideal path, and that like being an assassin is not really suited for Rayla as we kind of grow to learn. But it's a nice moment to have that, like, it really gets across, like, as the book ends, that like, okay, this is this new family dynamic as well. As far as the Athari Runan relationship goes, I think it's pretty well done throughout the book. They don't try and like, like hide it or be vague about it or anything like that. They're very upfront about the fact that these two are, a couple, that they're married. I think Athari calls like Runan darling at least once or twice over the course of the book. You have kind of clear moments of sort of like kind of intimacy in a way between the two, and yeah, you do even get a kiss, as you can see here, that Rayla does see. So I'm not sure like necessarily like the fact that she kind of watches that if it's meant to sort of like. The way they work it in the book, it's not that this is her like discovering that they're in a relationship or anything like that. I think she's aware of that. This is more, I suppose, her seeing like the idea that like Runan is an assassin, but he also kind of loves people, and this is another part of the dynamic that they kind of go into, of just like her being a little bit confused about the idea of like, how can you kill people but still kind of like love people as well. And it's just this idea that like, the kind of more positive side, I suppose, of assassination is just the idea that you kill certain people in a way to like protect the overall people, the people you care about, and that being kind of cool. Like your duty, the reason you do these things is kind of fundamentally to, in some way or another, protect the people that you love. And so that's, I think, what that scene was more leading towards. So that is covered in a pretty nice way. So, yeah, I think that's everything I want to say about this book. It's one of those ones where, like, at the time, like I said, this one feels kind of more important, but I feel it will slowly fade away as being, like, less and less important over time. Whereas this one is always going to remain as this sort of, like, foundational kind of thing of, like, here is the core of the dynamic of these three important characters. And especially because we know, like, theoretically that she probably will go on to be reunited with some of these characters. Like Athari, we know, is still around, and then both of her parents as well as Runan are in Viren's kind of coin things, the dark magic trapped in coin thing. So we're expecting to, I suppose, at some point see those characters released in some way, at least some of them. So especially sort of the Runan dynamic, it kind of feels like we probably need to come back to that, especially, and then also the Rayla and her parents thing as well. And I suppose especially like if there's a slight relation between the two, knowing how this book ends and that like Rayla has decided to sort of pursue leads about what she views as the return of Viren on her own, involving like choosing to not bring Callum along with her and sort of like, separate the characters. That seems to be like a reveal going into the next season. And in a way, like, she's doing that, putting herself on the line to protect the people she cares about. In a way, the setup for that kind of comes from here. Maybe a little bit of a stretch, but, thematically, the ideas are sort of there to a certain degree. So, yeah, they're my thoughts on The Dragon Prince, Bloodmoon Huntress. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments below, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.